Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Stephanie Tang, and I'm the marketing coordinator with AMSA. Joining me is our CAO, Craig Grinchuk, and our guest speakers from WCB-Alberta, Carrie Johnston and Shauna Lee Green. Before we get started, I am just going to go over a few housekeeping items. So first, attendees have been muted, but you are more than welcome to participate via the chat function, and feel free to interact with each other and ask questions as well. Second, there will be a Q&A at the end of this presentation. If you'd like to submit a question, please feel free to do so throughout the presentation today using the chat function or the Q&A function. And if you would prefer to ask your question verbally, please raise your hand and you will be taken off mute at the appropriate time. Lastly, if you encounter any tech issues, please feel free to reach out in the chat. I will be monitoring and I am more than happy to assist. And without any further ado, I'll pass it off to our team to get things started. Take it away, please, Craig.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Just on to the next slide, please. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for being able to join us today. For those who would have done the registration and posted any questions in advance of attending, thank you very much. The learning objectives, I won't read them verbatim as they were posted on the webinar to make sure that we were being clear on what good looked like by attending the session today. You will be getting a webinar survey afterwards to hold us accountable on whether you got what we told you were going to get from the attending this session here today. So we would appreciate you being candid in your feedback to us on things that went well or any opportunities for improvement. Next slide. For those who would like to be able to connect with me afterwards for any questions that you have that maybe aren't suitable for going to WCB that are more from a municipal perspective, you're welcome to contact me directly. And next slide. Just from a perspective, we have created a dedicated industry custom pricing microsite, which is directly on the AMSA website to hopefully be a clearinghouse for all things industry custom pricing, including employer sheets on industry custom pricing programs, contact information for underwriting for WCB, the PowerPoint for the presentation today. All of those things will be available as resources for you to hopefully be a good spot to answer all of your questions. And on that note, this is a spot for advocacy and representation from AMSA. AMSA does not take a position saying you should or shouldn't stay within the program. What good looks like to me is that you hear a nonpartisan view from either our regulator with WCB or AMSA, and that tells you a way that you should go into a program. Only you know the best options that are available for you in voting during this time of repolling. Our job is to try to make sure that we have the most available version of the truth for you that allows you to make informed decision making for your municipality. However, if there's any context or nuances related to just general questions, happy again to be able to connect and give you any insights that we have that perhaps, given the amount of time since the last time repolling occurred, might add some value. Next slide. And without further ado, it's with great pleasure that I introduce Carrie and Shauna Lee. And on to you, Carrie, onto your capable hands to start with the presentation on ICP.
Thank you, Craig. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for your time today. I'm Carrie Johnston. I'm the Director of Employer Account Services. So I oversee Employer Account Services, which includes our Employer Contact Center, as well as our underwriting, premium audit, and claims audit teams. I have been with WCB only just over a year. And so when I started, WCB is in how we calculate premiums is unique. And I've been in insurance for a while. I came from health, travel, life, and then property and casualty. So it was still a big learning curve for me because WCB premiums are calculated quite differently. So for folks on the call who might manage your organization's entire insurance portfolio, I do understand the complexity of WCB versus those other insurance lines. So we have a few folks with us from WCB today who will help us with this information session and who are available to answer any questions that you have at any time. Please feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We'll share the email for our industry support team, and you can also reach out to our underwriting team. And we have Shauna Lee Green from our industry support team, and we also have some of our underwriting analysts with us on the call today to support. So again, as Craig mentioned, the purpose of this session is to provide a clear overview of industry custom pricing, how it works, what changes under the program, and what that may mean for municipalities. Our intent is to support understanding and informed participation in the current voting process by clarifying the structure and implications of the program. If anyone on the call, imagine you've received your repolling package, but if you're still wondering where it is, feel free to reach out to us because maybe it just went to someone else in your organization. And we can make sure that we have the correct contact folks for receiving that repolling package. So to ground the discussion, I first wanted to start with a refresher on WCB's basic premium pricing structure as a starting point. Thank you. So under standard pricing, WCB, we first set the industry premium rates each year based on the overall claims experience at the industry level. And then at the employer level, we apply the employer's payroll and the employer's claims experience to those industry rates. So as you know, employers' experience impacts whether a discount or surcharge applies. So as it says here, standard pricing, it's the normal starting point unless an industry has chosen an ICP option. And then within standard pricing, employers can still receive discounts or surcharges depending on their claims experience and the rules that apply to their pricing program. And it's important for us to state that performance, claims performance, matters under both standard pricing and ICP. ICP just changes some of the pricing rules that sit on top of that base system. So that key point here is that performance already influences your premiums today. ICP does not create that relationship. It changes how directly it is reflected, though, and through which pricing features. So I'll turn it over to Shauna Lee, and she can explain what we mean by performance in this context.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Shauna Lee. So I'll kind of be talking from the industry support side of things. But when it comes to performance, what exactly do we mean by that? So in this context, performance comes down to three main areas. It's about injury frequency, we've got claims costs, and then also return to work outcomes. So these are operational measures and they're reflected in premium calculations over time. I'll explain a little bit more about these in the next slide we've got here. So when we look at the key factors of performance, it is really important to clearly understand what each of these topics mean. So claim frequency reflects how often injuries occur relative to other employers in the same industry. So one way to think about this is how many claims do you have per 100 workers compared to a similarly sized employer in your sector? So, for example, if your municipality has 50 workers and you've had one claim in 2025, that equates to 2 claims per 100 workers. In contrast, let's say there's a larger municipality within your sector and they have 1,000 employees with 50 claims that occurred in 2025. Then we're looking at about 5 claims per 100 workers. So these are just hypothetical examples for today's session. You can find some more details on how your organization compares to the industry overall. We've got some reports available both within the employer and industry synopsis that you can pull through the MyWCB portal. We also mentioned that claims costs are a key factor in performance. So these costs can be including medical aid treatment. So this might be physiotherapy treatment, doctor's appointments, prescription medications, anything like that. Wage replacement, so any type of wage loss benefits WCB has issued on the claim, rehabilitation, and long-term benefit expenses. A really major driver of these costs is return to work outcomes. So, specifically, how effectively injured workers are supported in their return to productive work, and this can include modified duties when and where appropriate. These outcomes are measured against the industry average using what we call the experience ratio, which ultimately helps determine whether your organization receives a discount or a surcharge on your WCB premiums. So with that foundation in place, I am going to turn it back to Carrie to define industry custom pricing itself.
Thanks, Shanalee. So industry custom pricing is an optional industry-based pricing program. It allows an industry to customize certain features of its pricing program rather than staying fully in the standard pricing model. It's a way to make premium adjustments more reflective of employer experience, which can increase accountability and strengthen the link between performance and pricing. The key thing to remember is that this is not an employer by employer choice. The decision is made through industry polling, and if the program is adopted, it applies across the entire industry classification. So why was the program introduced? Next slide will give a bit more detail on the program. So it was introduced and for about 20 years ago as part of a broader move toward performance-based pricing. It gave industries the option to customize certain pricing features collectively rather than applying the same pricing structure across every industry. So at a high level, it created more flexibility in pricing design while keeping the decision industry-based. There are specific benefits and drawbacks to each ICP program, which we'll discuss shortly. So that leads us into how this matters specifically in the municipal context. So at a high level, your premium, again, is influenced by two things: the industry rate and your own claims experience. Your industry decides collectively which pricing structure applies, while your organization's claims experience affects whether your premium moves up or down from the base industry premium rate. Regardless of whether you're in standard pricing or in custom pricing, better performance leads to lower costs. So the practical question is how directly premiums respond to employer performance and through which pricing features. So that brings us to how ICP is structured and what options exist under it. So some basic principles of ICP: it gives industries greater control over premium calculations as compared to standard pricing. It recognizes different industries have unique risk profiles that benefit from customized approaches. If your industry votes in favor, every employer participates regardless of your individual vote, and your industry's performance is reviewed through repolling on a regular cycle. Industries can request early repolling after the third or fourth year with sufficient evidence of that interest in an early repolling, which is why we're having this discussion today. The municipalities were last repolled 3 years ago and requested to be repolled again in 3 years. I should clarify that that's the cities that were repolled 3 years ago and requested to be repolled again in 3 years. So that's why we're here today. Right. So there are two primary options in the ICP program. The experience rating option changes how strongly performance is reflected in discounts and surcharges. For industries that participate in the ICP-ER option, employers in the large business experience rating plan will have customized features in their pricing program, which increase the maximum available discounts and surcharges from 40% to 60%. So you're aware, the large business experience rating plan only applies to employers with $15,000 or more in premiums over a 3-year period. For employers who have premiums less than $15,000 over a 3-year period, they're in the small business experience rating plan and they're not impacted by this ICP-ER option. For those small business employers, the range of discounts and surcharges remain at 5%. And then on the right-hand side there, the cost relief option changes how that one element of cost sharing is handled through the cost relief levy and the cost relief treatment. So specifically, this refers to the cost relief tied to prolonged recovery from an aggravation of pre-existing condition. This is just one type of cost relief. So the next slide shows how the two options differ, particularly in how the cost relief levy is treated. All right, so for the experience rating option, the cost relief levy would stay in place, and the financial impact is primarily seen through changes to discounts and surcharges that are tied to claim performance. Whereas under the cost relief option, the levy is removed from employers in this program, that cost relief levy is removed from the base premium, which lowers your upfront premium, but now one specific category of cost relief is no longer eligible for transferring out of that employer's claims experience. So I'll walk a little bit more detail on the cost relief option first, and then Shauna Lee will take you through more detail on the experience rating option. So for ICP cost relief, this slide outlines the benefits and trade-off under this option. So the main feature is that lower base premium because the cost relief levy is removed. Another consideration is that there may be greater variability between the employers in the industry where that specific category of cost relief no longer applies. Remember that some employers will have this type of cost relief in their claims, and other employers may not have any claims that have this type of aggravation of pre-existing condition. So this is why it's important for you to understand the nature of your claims, and we'll talk more about that later. So really, the cost relief option changes how certain costs are shared and where those costs sit over time. And then to make that more concrete, the next slide, we'll just walk through what actually changes under ICP-CR. So under ICP-CR, it keeps the claim costs more directly connected to the employer instead of spreading this specific type of cost across the industry. It creates a stronger reason to focus on safety, prevention, and return to work. The industry base rate is lower because the cost relief levy is removed. And it's argued that there's less administration for the employer associated with identifying and ensuring this cost is moved out of an employer's experience. The trade-off is that employers under this program are not eligible for cost relief related to that specific type of claim, which is tied to prolonged recovery related to pre-existing conditions. And I should clarify that it could be a portion of the claim. So there may be that initial claim costs and then separate claims costs that are related to prolonged recovery relating to pre-existing conditions. So it may not remove the entire claim, it may just remove a portion of the claim. So as a result, premium outcomes may become more directly connected to claims experience and may vary more from year to year. So that's what changes structurally. So the next slide shows how premiums are priced under the two options. Okay, so the base rate. Cost relief normally allows certain costs to be shared across the industry, and that sharing is funded through a levy built into the base rate. It's kind of like it's a second level of insurance that you pay for. So under ICP-CR, that levy is removed, so less of that cost is shared and more of it remains within the individual employer. So the simplest way to think about it is less cost sharing means more direct impact from claims experience. And to make that tangible, the next slide shows what the levy could look like in practical terms. So this slide gives a simple levy example. We used a 16-cent levy. That is not the levy that is in the municipalities' repolling letters, but we do have some industries in standard pricing that pay a 16-cent levy. So we just use 16 cents as an example. So every employer in standard pricing pays a cost relief levy as part of the premium, and the actual amount for a particular industry is outlined in the polling materials. So it's a reflection of the utilization of that type of cost relief in the cost adjustment window, which is the previous 4 years. But Shauna Lee can correct me on the period. The example here just shows how the levy appears in the base premium. So I'll turn it over to Shauna Lee so she can explain how the experience rating option works. And feel free, Shauna Lee, to weigh in on anything I missed when I was explaining the cost relief option. Thanks.
Perfect. That sounds great. I honestly got a tiny bit distracted with the next slide, so I missed your question, but we can always loop back to it for sure at the end, and we can just double check on that. But everything else sounded excellent. So I'm going to talk more when it comes to ICP or ICP experience rating. So before I get into the details, I really want to highlight that everything we're reviewing here applies specifically to employers who are part of that large business pricing program. So as Carrie had mentioned, this just means organizations that pay $15,000 or more in WCB premiums over that 3-year period of time. So when we look at industry custom pricing experience rating, or ER, this option refers to the this option offers the potential for larger discounts for high performers, up to 60%. This is compared to the maximum 40% available under standard pricing. However, it is really important to understand there is also a broader range of possible outcomes. Because this model places greater weight on your organization's performance, differences from the industry average can have a more significant impact. So, the trade off to consider is that if your performance is worse than the industry average, it could result into a surcharge of up to 60% versus that 40% in standard pricing. In short, this option increases how strongly your individual performance is reflected, both positively through discounts and negatively through surcharges. So, to make that practical, the next slide is going to show what that can mean in real terms. Under the experience rating option, the range of premium outcomes can widen based on the performance relative to your industry. So the key point is the total premium required across the industry does not change. What changes is how that amount is distributed across employers. So this means that if you are performing worse than the industry average or your organization is going to see a greater impact to your premiums. This is going to be compared to organizations that are performing better than the industry average. So it's really important here just to kind of understand where you are in terms of your own disability management performance, in terms of those performance factors we talked about, frequency, cost, and return to work outcomes. So again, with ICP ER, we've got that fluctuation that can go from a 60% discount, which is great, all the way to a 60% surcharge, which could be pretty substantial. So things just to kind of keep in mind and consider. So we've got an example here. So this example uses a simple base rate to illustrate how the adjustment range expands under ICP ER. It is important to note the industry base rate outlined in this example is purely for illustration purposes. It is not the 2026 industry base rate for your industry. So I just want to highlight this is purely just an example. So let's imagine your industry base rate is $1.50 per $100 of payroll, or often what we refer to as assessable earnings. This is what an average employer would pay, is that $1.50 per $100 of assessable earnings. Under standard pricing with 40% maximum adjustment, the best performers, so the ones that are doing really, really well in terms of their disability management performance, they might pay 90 cents per $100 of assessable earnings instead of that 150. So they're going to be seeing a 60-cent per $100 of assessable earning discount, where the poorest performers could see up to $2.10 per $100 of assessable earnings. So again, that's that 40% discount or 40% surcharge equates to that 60 cents. Under ICP ER, with 60% maximum adjustment, the best performers, so if you're doing the best in your entire industry or kind of one of the best, you could pay as low as 60 cents per $100 of assessable earnings instead of 90. While the poorest could pay $2.40 per $100 of assessable earnings. So really what we're talking about here is better performance leads to lower costs. And the ICP ER pricing program amplifies both the rewards and the accountability for that performance. So the purpose of this example is not the exact number, it's to show the wider range of potential premium outcomes when the discount and surcharge limit increases. And did I escape here? Okay, I'm not sure if my video just automatically cut me off. But just to kind of recap here, in case anybody had missed that part, again, we're just looking at that range. When it comes to the ICP ER, you're going to see that 60% potential swing either way. Next slide, please. So this slide summarizes the distinction between pricing changes and the workers' compensation system itself. So what changes under ICP is the pricing structure. Changes will be to either the discount and surcharge range or the levy and cost relief treatment. What does not change is the broader system. So claims are still managed in the same system, the entitlement test does not change, and employer performance can still be reflected under both ICP and standard pricing. Stepping back from this detail, the slide highlights what changes and what does not. So I'm going to give it kind of another minute here or two if somebody wants to kind of keep an eye and just read more into this. But really just kind of hoping that everybody gets a clear understanding of when it comes to ICP. Again, as Carrie had also mentioned, it's just a matter of how the costs kind of accumulated or collected are being distributed, impacting each individual employer. Next slide, please. So now that we've walked through both ICP and standard pricing options, I'm briefly going to explain how they are currently applied across the municipal sectors. So this slide shows how the model is currently applied in cities and municipal districts. These sectors are currently in the cost relief option, meaning costs due to the aggravation of pre-existing conditions, which is just one type of our cost relief, are not removed from the employer experience record, and these costs remain included in historical claims experience. I do also just want to kind of loop back when we're looking at aggravation of a pre-existing condition, just to kind of highlight that. So let's say I've been working for your municipality for 10 years. I know I've had arthritis in my shoulder. It's always been there. It's never prevented me from being able to do my regular job. One day I slip and I fall and I land on my shoulder. Normally, a sprain strain type of injury may be resulting from that, but actually, what has happened is I've now aggravated that arthritis that was never bothering me before. So that's that aggravation of a pre existing condition. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as well. So again, we're looking at sectors with the municipalities in the cities section that are currently a part of ICP cost relief. So when these costs remain included in historical claims experience, there is a levy that's used to fund this type of cost relief, and it has been removed from the industry base rate premium. So for when it comes to ICP cost relief, all other types of cost relief, cost capping, and cost transfers are still available in this pricing program. So you are waiving your ability to request cost relief due to a pre-existing condition, but you can still request cost relief for things like concurrent conditions, delay in hospital admission. There's third-party cost relief. So I do encourage you to also take a look. We've got our policies available online. Policy 0502 lists all of the cost relief opportunities, so it'll show you the other options outside of aggravation of a pre existing condition. Now, for towns and villages, this sector is currently in both ICP options, so cost relief and experience rating. So, since 2010, towns and villages have been participating in both, like I say, ICP CR and ER. This means that cost relief due to aggravation of a pre existing condition is waived, and the experience rating adjustment range is also expanded. So, with that context, the next question becomes how does an industry move in or out of these options? And I'll hand it back to Carrie to explain a little bit further here.
Thanks, Shanalee. So the key point here is that voting is weighted by assessable earnings, and more than 50% is in favor of either entering the program or staying in the program is needed for the industry to move into ICP and or stay in ICP program. Once an industry has entered an ICP program, the standard review cycle is 5 years. Again, as Shanalee mentioned, for towns and villages, you're currently in both ICP program options. So when you vote during repolling, you're submitting 2 separate votes. One is for whether your preference is to remain in the ICP waiving cost relief option. And the second vote is whether you would also like to stay in the ICP experience rating option. But those are 2 separate votes. And it's possible that the industry as a whole, when the votes are tallied by that assessable earnings weighting, that your industries may stay in one and leave the other, stay in both, or leave both. So those will be assessed separately. So the next slide outlines the process in a simple sequence. So at a high level, the process is straightforward. The industry votes, the threshold is calculated based on assessable earnings, a decision is determined, and then any changes implemented in the next rate year. So the next slide explains the industry or explains the process from the industry perspective. Okay, so it just makes that key point that the result applies to the whole industry and the threshold is based on assessable earnings rather than on the number of employers. And then the next slide shows the timing for the current polling cycle. So polling opened in June. It closes at the end of August. The results will be finalized, and then any change will be implemented in the 2027 rate year. Okay, so Shauna Lee will bring this back to what remains within your ability to influence at the organizational level.
Marvelous. Thank you. So earlier in the presentation, we talked about the factors that drive performance. So again, frequency of claims, costs, and return to work outcomes. What we have here are some of the operational areas that can affect performance outcomes over time. So first, prevention really is the best way to reduce claim frequency and therefore premium costs. So if you have the opportunity to prevent the injury from occurring, there's no need for a claim. Having a strong health and safety practice and procedures in place is a really great way to influence this. It's also important to remind folks of safe work practices. So, if you have a workforce that's been employed with your organization for years, maybe if not decades, many components of their job may seem second nature and little thought needs to go into the tasks that they're performing. So if I've been doing the same job for 20 years and I'm always lifting the same box onto the same shelf, I probably don't have to think about it too much. But really be sure to remind folks that even if they've been doing this job for several years, they should always be vigilant about safe work, whether that's proper lifting techniques, ensuring tools and materials are in good working condition, or just being mindful of workplace hazards that should be addressed. So it's a really kind of key component here. Second, we've got early injury reporting, which can be very critical. So, when injuries are reported right away, it allows for prompt medical attention and appropriate treatment. This not only supports a faster recovery for workers, but it also helps reduce the overall cost of the claim by preventing complications and delays. So, kind of, we always look at it, can we get somebody the right treatment at the right time? Third, having a well designed return to work program is essential. So, providing modified or alternate duties allows injured workers to stay engaged and productive while they recover. This supports better outcomes for both the employee and the organization and helps manage claims costs more effectively. So, it's also really important to ensure workers are aware that modified duties are available. So we often see individuals will go to their family doctor and indicate, my employer doesn't have any modified work for me available. It's either my job or nothing at all. This can often result in delays in recovery. So consider collaborating with different departments in your organization to identify tasks or duties that could be completed in the chance that modified work is required. So I often refer to this as my dust bunny list. So if there has been a dust bunny that's just been growing in the corner of the office over several years and you haven't had the chance to get somebody to address it or clean it, add that to a list of things that, okay, we need certain things to be done around the department or around the site. Even if every individual is just able to write down even 4 or 5 different options, it can really help build that return to work and modified work program. Finally, consistency and safety practices across all departments is key. So it's important to ensure there are no gaps or weak links in terms of how safety is managed across the organization. So, a consistent approach helps reduce incidents overall and prevents specific areas from driving up your performance results. So, just kind of keep in mind if you're seeing a huge influx in terms of parks claims, so your individuals who are working on parks, maybe it's the seasonality of that. Maybe just provide a little bit of extra training at the beginning before they get started, just to ensure they know, okay, proper safe practices and also how to report the injury and ensuring that they're aware modified work is available if that's the case. Next slide, please. And we're actually about to kind of wrap up here. So we have a couple more slides to go. However, we do want to circle back and summarize today's session. So one of the key things is ICP participating is voluntary and it's decided through industry voting. So it changes how costs and variability are distributed and it increases how directly performance is reflected in your premiums. Municipalities can influence performance through operational practices, and the main consideration is how the model aligns with your organization. So, we really want to kind of encourage you to take a look at your performance, your claims, your general practices, and determine what is kind of the best option for you and your organization. If you want to explore this further after today, the next slide will show a few resources that you can refer back to. Perfect, thank you. Yep, we're good for the next one. So I'm going to try and leave this one up for a kind of minute or so here because there are a few QR codes if you'd like to scan those. There will be a copy of the slide deck available as well. So if you're actually listening in from your phone, don't panic. We'll have these available for you after as well. But there are some really great additional links that are going to be available. So one is to the WCB ICP website. So there's some really good fact sheets available there. There is also an email address you can see with some additional questions. If you've got any, you can send them that way. We've got some good information about the return to work process and what we call occupational injury service. So, if you're not familiar with that, I love to talk about it as an industry specialist. The industry support email will be listed on the next slide, so I'll give it a second before we go there. But again, if you have any questions when it comes to the return to work process, disability management, things like that, we're happy to assist. We do also have employer seminars and workshops available to employers. Those can be found through the WCB website as well. We've also got some forms, guides, resources landing page, fact sheets, all sorts of really great things. So we do encourage you to take a look at those. And I believe we should be okay to move to the next slide. Marvelous. And I'll also let Carrie wrap things up as well, but I did just want to highlight the email address here. So that's going to come directly to the team that I'm a part of. We can help assist with also claim specific questions. If you've got those, please do not include any claim related information in today's session. But if you'd like to kind of have a conversation after the fact, please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks so much from my end of things for attending today, and I'll pass it back to Carrie.